Thanks for staying with us on the conversation. Now we switch gears to Nigeria, where in an effort to foster peaceful elections, 18 political parties registered to partake in Nigeria's 2023 general elections, which is tomorrow, on Wednesday, signed a second peace pact. The Peace Pact, organized by the National Court for Peace under the chairmanship of a former head of state, Abdulsalami Abubakar, entails that all participants accept the outcome of the elections or seek legitimate means of redress if not satisfied with the conduct of the elections.
Now, the signatories and dignitaries present, including former Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan, believe that the peace accord is a way to strengthen the nation's democracy and stave off looming violence. Meanwhile, the Nigeria's government has ordered the closure of all its land borders for Saturday's highly anticipated elections. Nigeria Immigration Service says this directive is meant to ensure that the elections are free and fair and devoid of anomalies. Now, join us in this discussion. We have Olufemi Lawson, is the Executive Director at Center for Public Accountability. And also we have Dr. Oluwole Ojewale. He's joining us live from Dakar in Senegal. Glad to have you on the conversation again. Now, Dr. Ojewale, peace accords in Nigeria have been, we've had this trend since 2015 and 2019 general elections. How significant are these peace accords, and do they really have any significant, do they have any effect on the citizens on the ground, or is just, is it just an exercise in futility?
Thank you so much. I think I'm particularly excited as a Nigerian that this idea of a peace accord has moved beyond the realm of symbolism to what I would say realm of humanity, in the sense that I would say it has now been humanized. Why am I saying this? I'm excited that President Jonathan, who lost election in 2015, and ahead of that election, kept emphasizing that no blood of any Nigerian is what is victory. Or to generalize, no blood of any Nigerian is what the victory of any politician in any election. So now being part of that process as a witness, and beyond being a witness, as an example, which I think others must follow, I think it has moved beyond the realm of symbolism to the realm of humanism, in the sense that it has now been personified by no less of a person than a president who lost election and is now championing that cause. I'm very, very excited about that. But let me say that he demonstrated that in 2015. We have not seen our present-day politician demonstrating that in intent and character by saying the same statement to their followers, whether on social media or on the street. We've not seen that. Okay. And I think Nigerians should see the lesson in this. Much as we have had all the vituperations, all the hangers, counter accusations, deep fakes, and then all kinds of things that are flying around. I have seen Atiku Abubakar, when he met Tinubu at the airport, how they greeted each other and they were smiling at each other. At the peace signing accord, Obi and Tinubu shook and laughed as though they were comrades and friends. And I think beyond the signing of agreement, the message is passed to their followers to now use their brain and prioritize Nigeria beyond anybody's ambition as we go to the poll tomorrow. Okay. So, in a nutshell, the peace accord has made significant progress by some of these factors that I've pointed out.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Ojewale. I'm going to bring in Olufemi into all of this. Now, we're still looking at the significance. Moving away from symbolism to humanity. We've had the first peace accord signed in September for this election in 2022. Looking at all what has happened, looking at the campaign rallies, electioneering periods, the statements from spokespersons, can you really say that this peace accord had any impact on the electioneering period? And what would you say has been the level of compliance for this election?
It has been of no significant impact, especially when you look at the record of violence that was recorded in the course of the campaign. Up to a few hours ago, just less than 24 hours ago, supporters of the All Progressives Congress and the New Nigerian People's Party in Kano State were involved in clashes that led to the loss of several properties. Less than a fortnight ago, a candidate of a major political party, the senatorial candidate of the Labour Party in Enugu State, was killed in what can also be termed as violence associated with political campaigns in Nigeria. In Lagos, there have been instances where campaigners of a particular political party have been attacked by supporters of another political party. Beyond signing peace accord, I think we must begin to migrate to the level where which we must criminalize electoral violence. Peace accord is just a conventional means of cautioning politicians. What is most important is for us as a country to criminalize violence during election. It's very difficult for you in America or the United Kingdom today to attack supporters of another political party or unleash violence on political opponents without finding yourselves in jail. But today, it looks like a norm to the extent that people could, on religious, on tribal, on other sentimental basis, attack political opponents.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Quite commendable that the Abdulsalami Committee has initiated the peace accord signing. But at this point, we must begin to look beyond the signing of peace accord to criminalizing electoral violence. And until we start doing that, people will keep violating these peace accord signings, just like we have witnessed. This has not really attained or achieved any reasonable impact as far as this election is concerned.
Now, staying with you, Femi, I just want to follow up on the point you made about punitive measures for those who violate this peace accord or foment trouble during the electioneering period. How do you tie it to the candidates of these parties? Because I'm sure no candidate has come out to openly say, go out and commit violence. Sometimes this violence is just spontaneous and people let emotions run high. And maybe not necessarily a card-carrying member of a party goes out to attack another party. So how would this enforcement work and how do you get around that?
It will always be convenient for politicians to exonerate themselves from violence perpetrated by their supporters. If you have been conversant with the social media, if you look at the characters of supporters of certain political parties on social media, you realize that these are elements who, when unleashed on the streets, or if whom given the capacity, can unleash violence on the streets because of their radical or belief or what, I don't know how to describe it, in their candidates. But what we have to do as a society is to ensure that the political parties and their candidates are held responsible for the actions of their supporters. It is very easy for candidates and political parties to deny the actions of their supporters because all this commitment about peace accord or promises, electoral promises, are merely conventional. But when it becomes a criminal issue, that is why you have the question of conspiracy in law. Sometimes it is not even about the fact that a person is where something was stolen or where a crime was committed, but for the fact that you had a knowledge of a crime that makes you culpable in law. So that is why we must begin to look at the option of criminalizing electoral violence to the extent that candidates will be able to caution their supporters, to the extent that political parties will be able to rein in their supporters and prevent them from getting involved in utterances that can instigate violence and ultimately prevent them from engaging in violent activities, just like we're currently witnessing. It is beyond signing of peace accord. This is not achieving any reasonable result when you look at what we have experienced between 2011, 2015, and most importantly between 2019 and now. It is very unfortunate.
Okay, I'm going to go deeper into all of this now. Now, Dr. Ojewale is still looking at parties' culpability into this electoral violence despite signing the peace accord. Now, former head of state Abdulsalami Abubakar during the signing actually revealed that 44% of the violations were carried out by spokespersons of the political parties and 26% by party members, while 19% by the presidential candidates themselves. Now, these are the records that they have. So they know that the spokespersons have actually been culpable in inciting violence. Why has nothing been done against the spokespersons to avoid them or avoid this recurrent happenings in future elections? Why are we still why is the peace accord still making statements and saying that this has been done, but yet, just like Olufemi said, there have been no penalties?
Thank you so much. Let me say that we need to underscore the fact that what is reigning in Nigeria is impunity. It is not that those laws are not there. So I give you an example. The incident that happened in Kano, or what happened in Enugu, what is the police doing about them now? Murder has been committed, violence against properties have been committed. We have extant laws to deal with that if you are found culpable. But because at the back end of the people that are fomenting this violence are also very strong politicians. So then those boys are arrested and you don't get to hear anything about it. And then it is swept under the carpet. So that goes in the direction of until you have the rule of law. When certain individuals and personalities in the society do not think they are above the law and they can act based on their own whims and caprice and don't really care whose us is God, then you continue to have this. And I wouldn't say the peace accord is not effective. Don't forget, elections are taking place at the local level. You signed a peace accord in Abuja. Tinubu was present, Atiku was present, Obi and other candidates were present. What happened in Kano? Who signed peace accord in Kano? To ensure that this is followed down the line to the local government level. I mean, in certain instances it takes place, sometimes it doesn't take place. The real deal is that we need to mature our society to the point that some of these things that are primitive and barbaric do not become contours of democratic experiment or development in Nigeria. So it is impunity that is reigning supreme. You talk about the rhetorics of the spokesperson. One of the spokespersons of the major political parties in this election had fought in the House of Representatives before. They tore his cloth, and then he's the spokesperson of the political party now. So what do you expect? What level of decorum do you expect from such individuals when he's speaking on behalf of his political party? So these are some of the things that we're talking about. And that is the reason why politics in Nigeria has gotten to the point that you have to decent people have to now get involved in politics. People of character, people who have a second address after politics. We're not talking about people who, since they left the university, they've not had any work done apart from politics. And that is the reason why for them, it's a do or die affair. You are a journalist. I am a researcher. So if I go into politics today, when I leave politics, I have a place to go back to. But these people only fit fat in politics. And they have to win by crook or by every available means. Available evidence in Port Harcourt shows that somebody has been arrested and a lot of dollars were discovered in police is investigating that now. Yeah. So these are some of the things that we're talking about. Until decent people go into politics, people who have second address, who all their life have not been living in politics, living on politics, we are probably not going to have any change of political culture in the country.
Thank you, Dr. Ojewale. Now, Femi, Dr. Ojewale mentioned two things that were quite poignant. He says the need to mature our democracy. He also talked about do or die affair. Now, elections are a civic exercise. You know, every Nigerian has a right to go out there to exercise their franchise and vote according to their conviction. So why is it that, after all these years, not just Nigeria, in a lot of African countries too, elections seem to be a do or die affair? Are you not going there to serve the people, and the people will decide if they want you there or not? Why have we made it such a tense exercise? You can even feel the tension in the air as Nigerians are going to the polls tomorrow.
Well, it will continue to look like a do or die affair until we, get to that point where elections and occupation of public offices will become the sort of responsibility rather than the privileges it currently looks like. Today, it is just like Dr. have said, the moment somebody gets elected into an office, everything about his life, his family, his survivor, even sometimes attachments, concubine, and the likes, becomes the responsibility of the Nigerian state. But until they get to that point where public office occupation is seen as service, as a form of responsibility, we may not be able to overcome the do or die tendency that's currently pervading our political atmosphere. Today, just like Doctor said, the average Nigerian politician has no second address. I know a politician in my constituency who since 1999 have had no other job. He has not opened even a supermarket between 1999 and now, but have only continued to survive being elected into the House of Assembly, to the House of Representatives, to the Senate, being appointed into one committee or the other. And these are the characters that have occupied our political space today. And it becomes very difficult for us to have credible leaders and credible politicians being involved in our elections. And that is why these characters will go to any length to ensure that they win elections, not minding whose life is lost or whose ox is got, because it is about their survival and their continuous existence within that circle. But when we economize our political system and when we ensure that politics becomes a part-time job, when we get to that point where you will not rely on allowances and salaries from political office to build your house, to ride good cars, to ensure that your family lives a good life, then we may not overcome the tendency of these do or die politicians. Today, politics in Nigeria has become so commercialized to the extent that people take loans from the banks, people take loans from cooperative societies to contest election, to offices with ordinarily legitimate allowances as meager as what ordinarily you cannot take a loan to occupy. But today, people could take loans from banks, and because it has become so lucrative, because the access to public funds, access to the looting of commonwealth is so free, and people like people say do not have second addresses again. So politics will continue to be do or die affairs in Nigeria until we get to that point where we delegitimize the economic aspect of politics, where people without jobs, where people without known addresses will no longer be allowed to occupy positions, where people can leave the National Assembly, state assemblies, and go back to their profession, and go back to their offices to work for their salaries and legitimate earnings. But if we don't get to that point, we may not be able to overcome these do or die tendencies of our politicians.
Okay, thank you so much. Now, Dr. Ojewale, quickly, there are three phases of this election violence where people fear election violence. There's the pre-election period, which we had the campaigns and the rallies. We have election day, and we also have after the election when the results have been announced, and there's still a lot of tension, and people are monitoring and trying to make sure that the person that they are voting for actually becomes the winner. So what role do parties play in ensuring that their supporters, because we also have some very passionate supporters who are die-hard fans of their candidates, who believe that this candidate should actually win the presidency. So what role do they play in making sure that these supporters refrain from inciting violence, and also the security agencies? Because oftentimes we see either the ballot, when areas where there's election violence, security agencies are either nowhere to be found or
they just look.
Everywhere is just empty. So what exactly is your assessment of security agencies and the role that parties play in making sure that their supporters do not incite violence?
So I will start from the event that shaped this 2023 election. And I think when you look back, there are lessons for us into the future. So I'm going to start with the polls that have come ahead of this election. I'm projecting certain candidates as a potential winner of the election. That by itself, if not well addressed, is a recipe for disaster. Because a recipe for violence, because what you are telling the people is that such candidates have already ticked the box. according to your polls. That is the number one thing. And I think on that note, it beholds the NBC, I think Nigeria Broadcasting Corporation or something. Yeah, that's a regulatory body, if I get
You're right.
Because a lot of media houses latch onto those polls without interrogating the methodology. So you talk to people, they are already saying this is the person that is supposed to win the election, except the election is rigged. So that has also positioned INEC in a very uncomfortable situation. That is the number one thing. The second thing is that the Electoral Act and extant legislations in Nigeria have developed guidelines for who can announce election results. So this idea of people coming back and then saying so-and-so person has won their local government, he has won their ward, he has won their polling unit and all those things. The Electoral Act forbids that, particularly in this age of social media. So what do I think the law should do, the law enforcement agent? The idea of the administration of criminal justice in any society is to scapegoat. So what do I mean? You don't need to arrest 100 armed robbers. You only need to arrest 2 or 3 and use them as scapegoats. So I'm expecting that the law enforcement agents, they will implement the guidelines, the provisions of the Electoral Act, particularly the ones that check the criminal tendencies of electorates in this election, and try to comb the social media, comb all the available spaces, and see if they can arrest 2, 3, 4, 5 persons who are announcing results. So when you do that, what you have been able to do is that in subsequent election, people are going to sit tight and know that there are certain red lines that you don't cross. That is the number one. I mean, that is a very important solution. Now for the political parties, they have the responsibility to continue to educate their members on how they should comport themselves as far as election is concerned. For instance, there is a time that the campaign is supposed to end. Are people still sharing campaign messages? So those are some of the things that I think the political parties need to do. But I'm not sure they are prepared to do that until we force their hand to do the right thing. And that is the reason why those who have the responsibility of care and the duty of care, they should live above board and then do the dictate of the law as far as this election is concerned.
Definitely.
The last thing which is very, very important, as we go into the election, particularly for the local level election, the subnational election, we must not begin to see the ruling party arresting the members of opposition party. It is very, very important.
Okay.
When you do that, you are trying to create a recipe for violence.
Thank you so much. A lot of responsibilities and expectations. And of course, the word out there is no violence. And let's have a free and fair election tomorrow. Thank you so much, Dr. Ojewale, and of course, Olufemi Johnson, for joining us on this conversation. Thank you.